Hello and welcome to In Service to Transformation with me, your host, Claire Darnell. It seems to have become a catchphrase saying that, and I kind of laugh at myself now every time I introduce myself. This week, I am actually with somebody for take two. And I think it's really important that I mention this because what I loved was the absolute clarity and self-assuredness that this individual showed in requesting a retake. What it showed me is that it's okay for us to feel like we haven't represented where we're really at effectively. And yeah, I have so much respect for this human practitioner woman. So I'm really excited to bring her medicine to you, and I'm sure we'll unpack more about that experience of the retake in a minute. So with no further ado, let me introduce you to Abbi Coleman. Abbi is a spinal energetics practitioner, but more than that, so much more than that. Like, we laughed and joked and said, actually, it's she who shall not be contained, who shall not be named. There's so many aspects to Abbi's offerings, but at the same time, ultimately, she's a human who wants to connect with other humans. So, Abbi, welcome back.
Thank you, Claire. I'm glad to be back for this retake, part two. Is it even part two? It's all part of the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so interesting, right? Because I noticed in myself when you first made that request, I was like, oh, is this perfectionism that's coming in? Like this need for it to be right. But actually, as we unpacked it together and you explained, it's all one thing looking. Why don't you explain? Why did you want to do the retake before we get going?
Yeah, interesting point on the perfectionism, because just then when we mentioned, okay, we're gonna like explain that it's a retake, I was like, oh, are people just gonna think that we just want it
There
to be
you go.
perfect
Yeah.
as space holders, it needs to be perfect and whatnot, which is no, it's not that. It just feels as though whilst it's great to touch on the transformation and what I've endured or, the path I've followed in life to get to where I am now, but also where I am now is equally important. And I just find that speaking very presently on what I'm actually moving through in real time holds so much value as well. And it just felt like that piece was missing.
Yeah, it
And
was.
it almost felt like it was disservice to transformation by not including
Yeah.
this part. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I love it.
Yeah. So it's like,
Yeah.
let's just do a retake and let's just,
Yeah.
yeah, come back
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
It feels so much more alive as well to do the whole thing again for me, because the nature of this podcast is that I think I've edited one episode. We do them organically, and
Yeah.
it's a conversation. So, and I think that's part of the magic. Um, Knowing that this is the unedited, it's real.
Yeah.
This is a real conversation between two humans.
Well, that's it. And it's
Mm.
like, it's okay to retake.
Yes.
Like, not retaking is, we could go on a whole tangent about this, but it's like,
Oh yeah.
it's not retaking, keeping it perfect and making it look like everything was said or whatnot. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? But it's like, we can totally do this. Like, and it was the
Yeah.
question that you asked me at the end was, do you feel complete? And I said yes, mainly because time.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I was like, you asked that question because you knew.
I love that. Yeah.
We had more to go. We had more to get through. So here we are.
Gorgeous. And I
Yeah.
love that actually. It is okay to retake. It is okay to do over. And that in essence is transformation, right? It's like,
Mm,
okay, we go through a process, we learn, we grow, we change, we reflect, we integrate, and then we're like, and there's more. And well, at least I speak for myself. This has been my experience. And
yeah.
so that life is a series of retakes. And the only thing that is super certain about life for me is
Mm,
change, right?
yeah. Yeah. And even from when we spoke last to now, I feel like a lot
Yeah,
has changed.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I look forward to hearing about it. But we are going
Yeah.
to go back in time.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just going to start at the beginning, right? Let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about, your journey of transformation and I guess where it may have begun or where there was a
Hmm.
first kind of aha moment for you.
Yes. So very important. There was a time of my life there's a pretty predominant time, which was a catalyst for all of this, which was around the time when I was 21. I left home. So the first time I moved out of home, I moved from Australia to London. Talk about
Mm,
just going all in. I decided not to do uni and travel the world. That was my thing. I was
mm,
6 months at uni. I was like, this isn't for me. I'm going to go travel. So I did that. And during that, a lot of the travel that I did was beautiful and very enjoyable. And what kind of like very gently and very sneakily started to blend in for my love of travel and also partying was numbing and disassociating from myself. So why did I need to numb and disassociate myself was because I ended up in a very tumultuous relationship with a human that was not a great human. And I ended up going through motions of different types of abuse and whatnot. And during that time together, I learned how to numb myself by disassociating. And this also came from like growing up in a household where it was strong to not to cry.
Yeah.
So I was kind of the emotional backbone for my family from a very young age. And my dad always said, don't cry, like you're okay. And bless him, that was to the best of his knowing. And he wanted to bring up strong daughters. Strong daughters. And what that ended up doing for me was becoming an emotional suppressor and didn't really know. And even my parents expressed at a young age, we're a bit worried about you. You always bottle up your emotions. Like you never cry. And unless I was like physically injured, you know, I'm fine, you know, I'm fine. And so I grew up as an adult, not really crying. And I had a long-term relationship that I came out of, and I actually healed, quote unquote, inverted commas, that through traveling when actually I was escaping. So I used to travel. Oh, I love traveling. You know, I love traveling, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing on an unconscious level, just running away, I guess, from my life and myself. And then anyway, so it was this relationship that I ended up in that was very tumultuous, physically, mentally, emotionally. And the catalyst was being injured, basically. So I'll just hold that piece there, run it back to when I was 14. I started having slip discs at a very young age. My disc would just slip. Like what 14-year-old has a slip disc? It would just.
Were you a sports person?
I
Was it
was
going through injury or?
Well, not this particular. The first time it slipped, I was literally just doing my homework at the table at my dad's house. And yes, okay, bad posture, all of those things. But yes, I was heavily into sports at that age. Although if I reflect, I know that it wasn't because of that. And I probably wasn't consciously aware of it at the age of 14, but it wasn't because of that. Do you know what I mean? Now I can see it. So fast forward to being in this relationship, which was in 2013, I had another slip disc and I just started having all this back pain and all these problems. And I had multiple times up until like during that time from 14 to 24, slip discs, tears in my back. Like my whole back was just not great. And this relationship basically was the catalyst for me to look inwards. I had completely lost myself. I was numb. I was turning into a rather evil person, like the person that I was with. And I just had this intuitive knowing that I had to go on an inward journey because I was going to the chiropractor. I was going to everything and everyone outside of me to heal physically, reduce my heavy load, start doing yoga, you know, decrease your stress, all of these things. And nothing was working. Nothing was working at all. So I thought, well, this is an inside job. If I'm doing everything externally and I'm still experiencing the same things physically, then I've got to go within. And I'm speaking about it now, like it doesn't quite, what's the word, matter of factly, because it feels a bit more matter. I'm not emotionally connected to that time of my life
and
anymore.
I imagine at the time it would have been super challenging, and even the language you're using, you probably wouldn't have had the vocabulary, right?
100%.
Yeah.
It was just a dark hole.
Yeah.
Has anyone been in a dark hole? Like it's
Hell
just,
yeah.
it's just, it was not fun. And I had insomnia. I wouldn't say depression. I would say moments, like depressive moments, you know, questioning my life, those big questions that come in. Who am I? What am I doing? I felt numb. I was so disconnected, so disassociated. I couldn't feel. I was frozen, absolutely frozen, but still functioning. And I'm still living the life. I was still young, traveling, doing my thing, going to different festivals, going to different countries, meeting new people. But inside, I was like dead. And I use that word because that's what it honestly felt like. Like I remember just looking in the mirror a few times and being like, I don't know who you are. Like, I don't know what this life is. And for at that age, it was quite confronting.
And as a reminder, what age were we here?
23. So that relationship started 22. It's funny how it's like you have
Yeah.
timelines. My life timelines of relationships. I'm like, what was going on at that
I
point?
know that one.
So I was in that relationship 2013, so I was 22.
Mm.
However, so that started at 23, that the first round of healing, I would say.
Mm.
But it wasn't an easy linear process. I got
Yeah.
sucked back into it a little bit, not with the same person, but just not deep in the healing.
Mm.
But deep in the lostness, I
Yeah.
guess. And
Yeah.
then 2017, I decided to like fully be in it.
Mm.
And so for context, I was going between Australia and here in London.
Right.
So the first time I knew I was like, it's time to go inwards, I went back to Australia because it's the beach and it's a very beautiful life. And I just needed my home to be held.
Mm.
And that lasted 6 months. And then I came back here again. I was like, I'm fine. Carried back on and went back, I wouldn't say downhill, but on the trajectory of how I was living previously.
Yeah.
And another relationship. And that ended, of course, you stay on the same toxic trait.
Mm.
And then
Part of the learning curve, right?
part of the learning curve. I did regain a lot of sense of self and power from that relationship because I chose to leave. It wasn't, and I knew that when I walked out, we lived together, and I knew that in that moment that was like a reclamation for myself of like my standard and not living like this anymore and settling for less anymore. So from there, I went back to Australia at the end of 2017. And lo and behold, that's when breathwork landed in my life.
Lovely.
And so it was just this series of, I think one of the biggest pieces from that time was that I lost my spirit, my wild, free spirit. And I even to this day, I'm calling it the wild spirit renaissance at the moment. But
I love how you give things names.
Yeah, that dropped in on the Lionsgate portal. Anyway, yeah, I lost the free spirit of who I was or who I am and what I have, and just that ability to just live fully. And it was, basically the decision I made to go back to Australia, and I was like, I'm going to go back, and I had an intention. I knew what I needed to do for myself, which is really beautiful. And I went back and I was like, I want to live by the beach, on the beach, as close to the beach as I physically could. And that happened. I managed to find a place that was literally, I could hear the waves from my bed. Like it was beautiful. And I just allowed myself time and space. There was no time frame. I was like, I'm just going to do what I need to do and want to do. And that's when breathwork first landed in my life.
And I mean, first and foremost, like so beautiful that even in spite of your going back and like, I guess that pattern, that family of origin pattern, whatever it is, that thing we need to heal will always recur, right? Until we do integration.
Yes.
But loving and just admiring really, even in such a tender age, a young age, having the ability to follow from within what was required, and that was to go home, to rest, to be in slowness, to find a place by the beach, and just really acknowledging you and celebrating you in that self-awareness at such a young age. In spite of your experiences, you still clearly have that anchor to self, which is beautiful. So breathwork kind of found you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of those things, and thank you for acknowledging that, because I think even to this day, I haven't been able to fully recognize what that took of me to be able to just kind of know. And I guess that's why I do what I do today because of that. But it really gave me, breath work, and it really gave me such an awareness and understanding of the human body and how stored emotion impacts and affects the physical body. Just as a little bit of a recap on the pain that the slip discs I was feeling was in my lower back was because of, so I followed a thread. Basically, I just feel like it's really important to touch on this, but I followed a thread. So basically, when I started to connect with my emotions through breath work, I started to understand, and even through physiotherapists that I was seeing back in Perth, and support and guidance that I had, and also research that I was doing, I started to understand that direct correlation. And so I was like, right, when did the slip discs in my life start? And when was like an episode, quote unquote, an episode, meaning like when did I have another slip disc? What was occurring in my life? How was I feeling? What was going on? What were my habits? Who was I being? And all of that. And I literally spent hours and went through a whole track record of myself and was like, well, when was that? And what was going on then? And I just followed a thread. And basically there was a theme, and it had everything to do with men. And in a sense of the relationships that I found myself in. It started when I was living at my dad's, and then into the next relationship and the next relationship. And I just started to discover that it had to do with my boundaries, you know, the lack of support for myself, the overgiving of love and bending over backwards for other people and all of that. Stability, my own anchor, you know, having my own back. And so when I started to kind of connect those dots, that was healing in itself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was like, oh, now I understand this. Now I know why I knew it wasn't a physical thing because of sports and whatnot. It was because I was unable to feel. And it was just literally living in my back. And anything stored in one place for so long eventually becomes heavy.
Chronic,
right? And so I was like, oh, like that realization, that pill to swallow was quite a big one, because it's like, wow, I can actually see this now, which means I'm now also responsible for the healing. And that's when breathwork really started to help, because I went to like, oh, I'll just go to this half-day retreat. Like, it's got a bit of breathwork there. I had no idea what breathwork was at this point. So this was very beginning of 2018. And I went to this half-day retreat, and the breathwork part of it actually just cracked me wide open. We were doing this breathing, and we're going up the chakras, the energy centers of the body, and it was just got to my throat. And I knew throat after throat, there's only 2 more chakras, which means we're coming to the end of the breath work. And I didn't really give myself fully to that moment. And I just heard this voice being like, are you going to sit here, or are you going to actually like let us get deeper? And I was like, okay. So I just took an extra like couple of deep breaths, and then boom, like this, when I say it cracked me open, I meant I have never felt emotion like that in my entire life. It was painful. It was dreadful. We were all sitting in a big circle, and we were holding each other's hands, and it was really beautiful setting to be in. And I just like collapsed. I was sitting up, but I just like collapsed, and I could just feel the people next to me just holding me up. And I just had this outpour, and all I could feel was guilt. And I was like, guilt for what? And then it was guilt for allowing myself to be treated how I had been treated. And that's when the responsibility of, I can't blame anyone, especially the abusive relationship that I was in. It's not his fault. Like, whatever his shit was his shit, whatever. I was just at the end of that. But it was like, I allowed this to happen because of my lack of ability to hold myself, my lack of ability to put a boundary, my lack of ability to express my truth. And I'm not to blame myself. That's just where I was at that point in my life. And I was like, whoa, I'm so sorry. Like, I just felt so sorry to myself. My heart and my inner child and just every part of me was like, how dare you let that happen? And I was like, fuck, like, this is deep. Like, I'm a parent to myself, and I let that happen. Because so many times I was like, how did I end up at this point in my life? Riddled. I was fit. I was so fit and healthy, so fit, so strong, to completely like debilitated, you know, could barely walk some days because of my back. I was in that relationship, I was breaking out in rashes. I ended up in hospital, like so ill. And I was like, how did I end up in this point? Like, I thought I was living my best life out here, you know?
Yeah.
The reality of it was that I was just ignoring myself. Didn't allow the time and space to truly get to know me. I didn't know how to feel. I used to be like, oh, I'm so strong because I don't cry. Like, yeah, I know.
That. Yeah, it's just like the things we tell ourselves. And I just want, if I can, I just want to interject here, because what's really, really so clear and dropping in for me is your masculine, right? Your inner masculine, your wounded masculine, your distorted masculine, you know, and what you're speaking of, like the back of the body being, you know, ultimately when we look at embodiment, that I work with, the archetypal type embodiment, we are the masculines at the back holding the feminine, and your back is going because it's you know, it's that lack of boundary, as you said, that lack
Yeah.
of structure that you were giving
Stability.
yourself, that stability, yeah, that
Mm.
groundedness, and yeah, just really ultimately that invitation to say, you need to look at this, you need to look at this, you need to look at this.
Yeah.
This
I
is out
need,
of whack, this is out of whack, there's distortion, yeah. And showing up in your relationship patterns too, where I'm guessing you're in relationship with the distorted masculine in many ways, and
yes.
actually what you're allowing yourself to physically move through in these relationship patterns being a manifestation of your internal imbalance as well.
100%. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like crazy how life shows up in that way.
Well, yeah. And like, that's such a good point. It's actually very poignant for now.
Okay.
Not just
Okay.
then. But yeah, essentially, I learned how the body holds the emotion, or where the
Mm,
body can store the emotion. And now it's, I can say that I've never had a slip disc since, which is beautiful.
mm,
Yes, I did go into continuing breath work for a lot of the healing that I've experienced and cleared. A lot of the stuff that I cleared from my body was from breath work.
mm.
Um, and it really gave me an opportunity to feel again as
Yeah.
someone who didn't feel much. And over
Yes.
time, and another relationship that comes in and then and comes out, I've learned how to fully encapsulate feeling, probably a little bit too
Yes.
much. I mean, also a Cancer and a projector in human design, so it's like keep piling it on, but in real time rather than
Mm,
pushing it down and hiding it and burying it and masking it, more so
mm.
just allowing myself to be in truth with feeling, which,
Yeah.
as somebody who didn't know how to do that and hadn't cried for a long time,
Mm.
is a beautiful thing to actually be able to own within myself.
Yeah. And to
um
give to yourself. Yeah.
yeah, and it was breath work that really allowed that. And that's
Mm,
kind of where I guess the deepening of my work and service came in. I was a personal
mm,
trainer before this, so I was always working with the physical body with people. So
mm.
holding space for quite a long time. So I became a personal trainer during the time of that relationship, ironically.
Mm.
Always supporting people with the physical. And then as I
Yes.
started to unfold this part of my life and connect with this, I then started to help people, support people with their emotions by becoming a breathwork facilitator.
Mm,
So I've always found that when I find something that I love, that becomes part of my work.
mm,
So choosing to be a personal trainer, I had no idea. I chose to be a personal trainer at a young age, at 21, and then I became self-employed 2 years later at 23
mm.
in personal training. But I had no idea that it would now lead me to where I am. And I think it is
Yeah.
a beautiful thing to work with the physical body, because I feel like as humans, that's what we relate to as ourselves mostly first. We have a
Yes.
physical vessel, we walk around in our physical vessel, and it's
Mm,
from back in the day. You have to look good. All of the stuff that we see on magazines, it was always a
mm,
physical thing. And then obviously working and understanding emotional health, obviously mental health came in with that as well. So then
mm.
it became service to that part with people.
Yeah.
And breath work, I mean, breath work is kind of everywhere now, but it is honestly, it's so powerful. And
It is
it's
so
just,
powerful.
one thing that I love is that it's not like, if you came to a session with me, it's not
Mm.
like I'm breathing for you. So it's the practitioner. It's not a modality outside of us.
Yeah.
It's your breath, your body, your
Mm,
medicine.
mm.
And that's what I love. I just remember feeling this is the most empowering thing, because I don't need to go to someone outside of me, because that's where I started with the physical stuff when I had pain. Everything
Yeah.
outside of me wasn't working because I still had the
Mm.
pain. And I'm like, well, it's an inside job. And that in itself, I was like, wow, I think we underestimate who we are as human beings so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And to never have a slip disc again, and to be stronger in my body, my back, don't get me wrong, it's probably not the strongest part of my body.
Mm.
And if I am out of alignment, or if I am in distorted masculine energy, I can
Mm.
feel it pinching in my back. But I now
Yeah.
know that that's my subconscious communicating to me. That's the ticker in my
Exactly.
body that
Yeah.
says, hey, something's off. Come and
Yeah.
tune in to me. I don't have to ignore
Yes.
it. I don't have to wait until I have a slip disc to actually listen to myself.
Mm.
It's like, oh, I have a niggle. Let me go
Mm.
within. So
Yeah.
I know that now that that's just the piece within my body that is my ticker. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I've got to tune into something. So it's
Yeah. I
beautiful
love that.
communication. It's the language
Mm.
of the body. And we all have
Yes.
something. Some people get migraines or a really tight shoulder or your knee buckles, and it's like the same
Hmm.
knee that keeps buckling. It's like there's something there. Let's tune into that.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, I love that.
Mm.
And we could do a whole episode, right, on how different parts of the body correlate with different
Stay tuned for part
emotional
three.
states. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I
Mm,
think because of how much I gained from it, I was like, everyone just needs to know about this. I was the same. I had a personal trainer and I was like, this is the best thing ever. I want to become a
mm,
personal trainer. Everyone needs a PT. And so
yeah.
that's what happened. I followed that. And then breath work came into my life and I was like, this is literally life changing. I've
Yeah.
reconnected with myself in a way that I never thought I could, or actually
Mm,
probably never even thought about. I didn't know I needed it in my life. I didn't know that
mm,
that was the piece that would actually literally save me, literally
yes.
save me. Um,
And I think it was really powerful how you spoke about also being in circles. So being in that breathwork ceremony, having that moment
mm,
where your consciousness or your spirit speaks to you and says, is this it? You're just going to like stay on the surface, or you're going to let yourself really go there? And then when you
yeah,
allowed yourself that privilege of feeling that collapse you could feel internally, internal collapse, but then being held. And it's something so
yeah,
beautiful you spoke there about being with the feeling of guilt, which I really associate with the masculine and like a distortion of the masculine of like that. It's not, almost like, what the hell have you been doing? It's not good enough, like almost that, but actually
mm,
also you being witnessed and held by the people around
mm,
you. Because I
mm,
think there's so much healing for us to access in community, in being
I agree.
witnessed, in
Yeah,
being literally physically held, supported, no words required, right? Just being
mm,
seen.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
love that that was part of your awakening, I guess. Mm.
It really was. The facilitators, there was two facilitators. They were a couple at the time, and it was just so. It really was. I remember I had a full third eye opening as well. That when I
Mm.
was held, I just everything. It's like everything came from my back and out my third eye.
Mm.
Um, and which is interesting because that was my first time experiencing something like that. But that experience also felt so normal.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's like
I wonder why. Share, what do you think that is? Let's share with the listeners who might not, they might think, what the hell are you talking about? Why do you feel that you had that opening at that point?
well, I feel like I had that opening because, first of all, it's part of humanness.
Yeah,
It's part of every fiber of who we are to
yeah,
experience and have this type of connection. And
mm,
also because it opened me up to this pathway
yes,
and just deepening into not only self connection just as itself, and
mm,
then connection with myself and connection with people.
yeah,
And I think, although I was very much in that moment processing my own stuff, there was also a little sense of leadership that opened up within me to go there whilst
yes,
being held. Um,
mm,
it's very nuanced. There's very multi-facets to that moment.
yeah,
Um,
mm,
that was a catalyst as well. So the relationship was the catalyst onto this pathway, but that moment was a catalyst in another direction.
mm.
It's like a ticking clock that just catalyzes.
Everything is just,
It's
yeah, as I see it, it's like spirit, the universe, our internal kind of God system, whatever it is,
yeah,
like that GPS,
yeah, yeah.
just constantly nudging us the right way. Your third
Mm,
eye opening so you can see, you can actually resonate with like your higher consciousness, your divinity,
yeah.
ultimately, that connection
Mm,
to God. Let's call it God for the sake of a name, a label. But ultimately, yeah, it's just everything is just nudging you forward in the right direction. And we have to be open enough to just trust and follow.
yeah,
And sometimes we need big nudges of like, look, I can help you to connect, to feel better, to move through this, for us then to just have that little bit of faith. You're
yeah,
like, oh, maybe I can trust this, like, shall I
yeah,
just take a chance? Because our human just
yeah.
wants certainty, they
Yes,
just
and
want to be
also just
fixed.
control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Mm.
didn't know at that point though
Mm.
what I was getting into or what would come up. It
Yeah.
seemed like a really nourishing day, and all I knew at that time was that I just want nourishment. Little did
There,
I
sorry, I'm laughing because they're always the best. When you think you're going for one thing and then you end up with this like heart cracked open kind of existential kind of
Absolutely.
crisis come awakening, right? The
Mm,
best opportunities, really.
mm.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
All right, here we go.
Well, just then when I was explaining about the third eye, you had a very auspicious look on your face. Like, why do you think that was? I want to know what you think that was.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's divinity coming into your
Yeah,
body, you know,
yeah,
ultimately. I always feel when third eye opens, third eye, crown, throat, each of those parts of that same channel, that's really our connected consciousness
yeah,
to God, to divinity. I'm not, you know, I'm not religious, but I'm
yeah.
spiritual, and I believe that we are all connected to source.
I
And
agree.
very often I feel that source allows us to see through the third eye. So yeah, you came into a state of opening and the third eye opened and you were able to
Yeah.
see. And
Mm.
yeah, that's what I believe. You had
And
a
I,
spiritual awakening,
yes,
basically. Yeah.
that's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to point out that I had an opening through pain
Oof.
because that
Oh, I got
it
goosebumps with that one. Yeah.
yeah, that it's literally like a lotus.
It's a
Like not
thing.
it's
Yeah.
a we go through the mud to feel the light on the other side.
Yeah.
And I will always stand true to the darkness of all
Mm.
of this work because we are in a time where there is a rise of all of this and there's a lot of preaching on the light only, but we cannot.
Yeah.
And I've the law of polarity. I always remind myself almost every other day the law of polarity because we simply cannot have light without dark. And it's
Mm.
like I did not know how much I needed to feel that and go there in order to start to open out even more.
Mm.
So it's not just about the opening, it's about like getting through the door. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like I had to truly feel that to
Yeah.
be quote unquote awakened.
Mm.
And that in itself, and I guess even probably until this very moment, I haven't really acknowledged like that courage
Yeah.
to listen to that voice that came in and that said, are you actually just going to sit here or are you going to do something about this?
Mm.
And I was like, oh, that was an internal voice that did
Yeah.
not come out. So to actually give myself that gift, I think is so profound
Mm.
and what would be beautiful for everyone to access when we have that point of, oh, am I just going to sit on the edges again? Or am
Yeah.
I going to actually give myself this?
So important, and I love how you've touched on. You're so right, and even I will try to default to the light, right? But it's like, and I love the darkness. I love a shadow. I love like
Mm.
unpicking things. In fact, I think we can almost get addicted to that part of the
Oh,
work.
that's a whole thing. Yeah, because then I don't actually have to go out and live my
You know, it's
life. I
like
can just,
addicted to the drama, addicted to the
yes,
fucking pain.
yes,
But there's
yeah,
so much magic and medicine in going in and down into the
down.
darkness and allowing
Yes.
ourselves just to really be there with the discomfort of the truth
Mm,
of, or the not knowing, right? Even not
hmm
in that space, that liminal space of, I just don't know,
I just,
know?
yeah, how
And
can I sit?
I have to get okay with not knowing what comes
Yes,
next.
what
And
comes and being okay with feeling
yeah.
like,
Mm.
gosh, feeling and this take brings me forward to the last relationship that I had, which was a beautiful, healthy relationship in the right direction. This is where I
Mm.
started to shift in the choices that I was making. I mean, that relationship still ended, so there's still work to do on the choices that I'm making. But what I was actually able to do at the end of that relationship was let grief into my body.
Mm.
That was the first time that I was like, right, I knew the relationship was ending. It ended beautifully. Like we gave each other a hug and we were like, this is the ending. Like our time together is finished. And I was like, I'm going to clear my schedule. I had no time frame. And I was like, I moved out. It was my house, but I moved out. And I was like, I was deep in breath work at this moment. And I was like, I'm just going to fully let this in. And it crippled me. Like it's like I could even feel the grief between my toes, like under my nail beds, like everywhere in my body. It was everywhere. But if I hadn't allowed myself to feel, I mean, who knows where I would be now? But from that first breathwork session, I don't know if I would have been able to fully allow myself to feel the entirety of grief from that
Yeah.
last relationship ending. And it actually gave me the full ability to heal all of the past relationships that I had numbed from.
Mm.
Because that's why it took weeks, that's why it took days, because it was every proper deep relationship that I was in, where I had fully shared my heart and body, I allowed myself to like fully feel that. And I just sat in it. I couldn't get up some days, but that was okay. I wasn't trying to make myself get up. I was like, because I know that the opposite of grief is love. And if I have this capacity to feel grief, then I also have this capacity to feel love. And that in itself, I was like, the tool of my own breath and connecting with breath work to now allow myself to feel this and know that I'm okay.
Yeah.
I was weak, but I was strong. I had that backbone. It's like all of the back pain, the distortion had gone, and it was just like a new spine. That I was strong, and I was like, I'm strong because I can feel this. I'm not weak because I'm feeling. I'm strong because I'm feeling.
Yeah, which is a complete 360 or 180. Who cares about the degrees? It's a complete change, about turn from where you were at before, which is like, I'm strong because I don't feel.
Yes, and now
I don't cry.
I'm
Yeah.
feeling.
Now you're the opposite. Yeah.
Well, that's it. And this is such a thing in society, in humanity. It's like, let me just continue on with my life, especially the masculine energy, not just, I don't mean men, I mean the masculine component, right? Like
the energy
of like, just keep going, keep calm and carry on. Do you know what I mean? And it was just like, no. And that moment really allowed me to shift into, I'm cool to cry. Like, not cry, feel the fullness of an emotion at any one time.
Yeah.
And so I'm not afraid of that now, in a sense. What actually became quite interesting, you know, when like you're in a forest or you're in somewhere dark and you can't see, and it's a bit like, oh, like I'm afraid of the dark. I don't know. It's the unknown.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was at this like retreat space this was in WA, out in the woods, and I was sitting in the jacuzzi out on the deck and just looking into a black forest. And usually that would freak me out. And I was like, not afraid of the dark anymore.
Such a metaphor, right?
Such a metaphor. I was like, because I can go into my own darkness, because I have sat with it. The breathwork sessions that I had were so deeply profound, where they do feel like plant medicine journeys, where it's like, I'm about to go on a whole tangent about that, but anyway, that's another conversation to have. But I was so okay with facing that darkness within myself that I could sit there and literally look into a black forest and be like, bring it.
Yeah.
I'm so okay with this now. And that was I remember that moment, and I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Take me to the light, of course, but
take
me to the darkness.
But yeah, I'm happy to sit here with the dark too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love how you mentioned about the pain being a gateway as well for your awakening. Like you'd had that third eye opening through pain, and I had actually, I do it a disservice. It was a near-death experience 4 or 5 years ago through a kidney infection. Well, basically, I ended up with sepsis and ended up in hospital for 3 weeks. I think I was very ill. And actually, for me, now when I reflect, I'm like, that was a portal. That was a whole initiation that was going on, because I went through these different phases of saying, if I die, you know, it was almost this reckoning of, if I die now, I'll be okay. My life is amazing and it's so awesome, and I will be happy if I die now, if this was my lot. And additionally, that feeling of, I don't want to die. I choose the light, but being comfortable with death and then choosing life. And I think that is such an important piece. And I think the same thing shows up for us with pain.
I agree. Pain is a portal. Someone
100%,
turn that into a meme. It literally is, because through that, I don't know, just from experience, we have both the law of polarity. We have both. We're talking right now, it's daylight, and somewhere else in the world it's dark. They coexist. And the more we open, like, we want love or we want light, and what's in that light? Joy, love, abundance, freedom, whatever it is. But whatever, our capacity open to the darkness allows us the capacity to open to the light. And then we open to more dark, we open to more light. They are literally like the opposite side of the same coin.
Yeah, they are.
You can't have a coin and only choose one side.
Unfortunately not, no. And also, Well, fortunately not actually. I'm gonna like actually think about what I'm saying there,
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
dark
yeah.
is as welcome, right? And language is powerful, words are spells, all of that stuff. But as you talk about that as well, there is almost this iterative approach as well. The more we accept our darkness, the more light we can let in, the more light we let in, the more we can accept our darkness. And there's
Yes.
this constantly meeting an edge, right? We're
Yes.
constantly meeting an edge. And in that, that's where the growth comes, where we
Yes.
constantly stay with what is true, what's there, what's allowing it. This is how we
Yes.
learn to hold more.
Exactly. More
Yeah.
fullness in life, because
Yeah.
everything, every emotion, every experience comes with sensation.
Mm,
And it's our capacity to feel sensation. And this is where the nervous system comes in. It's like the elasticity of our nervous system growing to be
mm,
able to hold more life. And if we want more life, we've got to be able to hold the fullness of that, not just
yes.
the little bits that are great. It's like, can I hold the sensation that's coming with this? I say I want
Yeah.
this, but can I actually hold that to its fullness? Have I met
Mm,
the parts of myself to fully feel so I can hold the things that I want? And
mm,
that's where it's like going into the darkness so I can have what I desire.
mm.
They just both exist. They just
Yes,
are.
they do. They just are. They just
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So where did we go from here? Because you've gone down this breathwork process. You've started to facilitate, you've trained in breathwork at this,
Yes.
you've gone
So at
down
this
that
point,
route.
yeah. So of course, I
Mm.
was like, everybody needs this in their life. So I became a breathwork facilitator.
Yeah.
And then I picked up my life and moved back to London. That was a whole
Mm.
other thing. Um, so I did breathwork in Australia for a little while. I can't remember how long, a year maybe. And then I decided to come back. Well, Spirit very much called me to come back to the UK.
Yeah.
Um, and I started my work and service over here again, which is ironic
Mm.
because I came back 10 years later and I became a PT in London 10 years prior to that. So this time I come back to London as a breathwork facilitator.
Mm.
And bringing together my plethora of, yes, modalities and
Yeah.
experience, but more so my medicine from what I've experienced in my life and a lot of what I'm sharing.
Mm.
Um, because, you know, I have that relationship to different feelings and sensations, and bringing that to the people is what I've always wanted to do, and just holding different events.
Mm.
So I did study in NLP as well, which is obviously the mindset part, the reprogramming of the subconscious.
Neuro-linguistic programming, for people that don't know what that is. Yeah.
Yes. And started to, yeah, welcome that here, which has been an interesting,
Mm.
very interesting journey over the last coming up to 3 years, which just blows my mind that I've been back
Mm.
nearly 3 years. One that has been tumultuous in a different way. So it was like 10 years later, I'm experiencing very highs and very lows in a
Mm.
very different way to what I did 10 years prior.
It's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if in 10 years from then, you're also going to, because some people, we work in cycles, right?
Well, that's it. Oh God.
You're like,
We're
what's going to
talking about the
happen? Is it
dark and the
another
light.
7 years away?
No, not
Yeah.
really. But I feel like all the tools and the things that we experience in life
Mm.
prepare us for what's to
Yes.
come.
Mm.
So if I hadn't experienced all everything I've just explained, I don't think I would have made it through the last few years of
No.
moving abroad again, starting a new life with
Mm.
more or less no one around because my family aren't here, building a new network again, new friendships, new sisterhoods, new client base, like
Mm.
doing that again 10 years later, and a little bit underprepared. If I'm honest with myself, I probably would have liked to have been more prepared. I just
Mm.
listened to the calling of spirit and just jumped on a plane and came. I don't really suggest that to anyone, without having a plan. And whilst that's beautiful in being able to trust that, I think it did also wasn't helpful. um that was a whole nother story.
Hindsight's great, right?
Yeah, and so I forgot where I was heading.
Well, I'm curious. Are we heading towards spinal?
We are heading towards spinal.
Where did that come in?
And what is spinal? What's
Yeah,
spinal?
what the hell is
What is
spinal, right?
spinal?
Well, I know what it feels like, but you are probably best to explain what it is.
Yes, so spinal energetics basically became another modality of which I have studied and
Mm.
learned and embodied and now facilitate. And that for me was also the next part of my development in who I am as a human being, working with the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, and now the spirit body or energetic body. And it really gives me, I also just say breath, brain, body, and now beyond, because spinal energetics works beyond the realms of all of that. And I think I said that last time, and you did say something back.
Oh, I can't remember what
No,
it
you
was.
can't.
It's probably
It was
genius, of course.
Of course it was. Of course. Claire was a genius. You're always a genius, actually.
Thank you.
That's all right.
I'll take it.
Yes. So yeah, over the last few years, just developing my business, I knew spinal energetics. So I saw spinal around the time I was back in Oz, about 2020. It popped up on my Instagram. And you know, when you see something and you're like, what is that? I need that in my life. Sarah, the founder, who's an absolute legend, I just saw a video pop up, and it's energy work essentially that works with the spine, hence the spinal part, and there are energy systems, the chakra systems. And I was like, I know I need this in my life. I know that that's going to be the next point of my pathway. And then I moved to London, and I was like, well, there goes that one, because I'm not going to fly back to Australia just for it. And then lo and behold, they came over here. And so I decided to do the training, which was back in April this year. And spinal energetics is, gosh, it's so hard to find the words. I'm just like trying to find the words at the beginning of, what should we call you? She who is nameless. Okay. It's on a practical level, it's energy work that supports the system in unwinding tension patterns from the spine. And essentially what it does is, through the facilitation of the energy, so let's just say we're in a session together, as you've experienced, you have your own innate healing ability, such as if you were to have a graze on your arm, your body knows how to heal that graze.
Yes.
You've had a child, your body knows how to overcome that and how to heal from having a child. We are ill and we know how to recover when given the time and the place, right? My body knew how to heal my back. Right? Yes. That is our own innate healing. That requires energy. So in spinal energetics, that is the energy of which we are connecting with. So you're on the bed, you're on the table, or online on your own bed in our instance. And that's the energy that I connect with as the practitioner, and support your body in guiding that through your body. Right? And what that essentially does is, if you have tension somewhere, in your hips, in your back, wherever it might be, the energy starting to move through your body allows you to unwind that tension. So the body innately knows, I need to move in this direction to move there. I need to open up here to do that. I want to open my heart, but I'm afraid to. I want to hide. So it goes through a movement pattern. To me, it tells a story of what the person is currently going through or experiencing or alchemizing or whatever we want to, integrating, whatever we want to call it. And the way that I kind of look at it is, if we're holding on to tension, what is tension? Tension is stress. What does stress usually come from? Something in our external environment. So inside of that is probably emotion. And if we go into the emotion, then we've got a release. So essentially what starts to happen is the body starts to open, move, and release and integrate stored experiences. Yeah. Does that even do it justice?
I mean, it's magical, right? It's just so...
It is something to be experienced.
Indescribable. It is something that needs to be experienced, because it's also deeply personal to the individual and what's moving through for them. Because I think one of the things that I find fascinating is it can support physical illness.
Yes.
And as you indicated, it works on the spirit body, it works on the emotional body. So it actually also can release, for me, my experience was it released a great deal of kind of karmic, energetic, ancient. And I think at that point in the last episode, you said, but you are ancient. And I've been meaning to ask you about that, because I thought, what have you seen? I had this image of me as Zelda from Terrorhawks, anyway. But yeah, I think it does meet the individual where they need to be met. And actually,
where
even
they're
from
at.
one, yeah, exactly. And every session for us has been like a journey and another successive kind of opening. That's what I've noticed.
It really does. And as I love breathwork, like you've just heard me speak about it. And what I love, so in breathwork, what is quite common is that if we are healing from something in our past, it's very normal to revisit and almost feel as though we're in that moment of time again. And a lot of people don't like to do that. I mean, why would you want to go back and relive some trauma? No human psyche would want to do that. Yet that's in breath work is what's necessary to access those emotions so that they can be alchemized, so they can be healed, met, loved, whatever. In spinal energetics, we don't have to revisit. That's what I love about it. We can still heal and overcome and complete the emotions and that experience from the past without having any memory come up. That is what's really beautiful about this, because emotion comes from energy in motion, meaning energy is moving through the body. What is energy? Energy is all the things, the plethora of everything that we feel. So it really allows the energy to move through the body without any attachment to meaning. And that bypasses any logic, because the human brain wants to attach meaning to something. Oh, I've been crying. Oh, I'm crying because I'm sad. If I'm sad, it must mean this about my life. It must mean this about me. It must mean this about blah, 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 blah. Whereas spinal, we don't need that. And that's why it's so hard to grasp conceptually what we experience, because it is inexplainable. We don't have language for this yet. It is the language of the body. And the body is far beyond the logical mind, the primitive small brain. The body speaks so much. We've got 5 senses. We've got multiple senses, but 5 senses that we're aware of. They all have their own life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like it expands consciousness massively. And the fact that we can't even sit here and talk about it properly, because it doesn't do justice to the feeling, shows us that there is so much more available to us in our bodies and in life.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just getting really excited there, because this is something that is just constantly dropping in for me, is at the mind. The human mind cannot even begin to understand the potentiality of us as humans, you know, as beings, and the volume and capacity of our connection to others. I think that this society is incredibly hell-bent on limiting that, on containing that, on making us lose connection or lose awareness of our potentiality, of our capability, of our infinite wisdom, power, knowledge. We have been conditioned into worshipping things outside of ourselves, whether it be a god. My belief is that God is within. We are all incarnate beings of God, of light. You know, we are made to worship things by consumerism, capitalism, things outside of ourselves that will make us better. And actually, the human mind can't begin to break against that conditioning, that patterning, that it's so easy to manipulate the human mind.
Well, and that's why we try to find language. That's why it's like, if we were to talk about at the end of the session, what was experienced in the session, it's so the human logic can then go and control the outcome afterwards. And, you know, I say to a lot of people on the question I always get after the session, well, what did you see, or what did you pick up? And I'm like, nothing. Who am I to say what went on in your field, in your body? And whatever I say could well and truly then plant a seed for how you think this might unfold in your life afterwards.
Very important.
And so it's such a deep trust in what I've actually found. And I know that all spinal energetics practitioners are different in how they use the energy and work in the field. A lot of the people that come to me and a lot of people that I'm working with there is no intention. And I love that, because let's just remain open to the possibility of what happens on the table. Let's not say, I'm here for this. Yes, don't get me wrong, there are people who do come for specifics, as the main thing that I work with when it's something specific is physical injury, which I love because I've been through all that. But otherwise it's like, no, I just know that I need this and I can feel that there's something available here. So let's just see. And then I'm always like, well, let's see what transpires today. And the body will always, and this is in any modality, the body will always give us what it needs, not what we think we want. And usually what we think we want is on the other side of feeling what we're avoiding anyway. So let's not control. Let's just go in and in full trust, because I understand that to people who this may not be normal in their world, or to people who aren't used to this type of work, or only at the beginning, it can seem blasé and a bit, well, no, I need a bit more structure. I need to know what, and I totally understand. That's where I feel like breath work is a really powerful tool for that, because you're consciously controlling your breath.
Yes.
This requires so much trust and so much, and don't get me wrong, not every experience is the same. Well, no experience is the same.
Never, yeah, far from it, actually.
Yeah, and even as an individual who's received the treatment multiple times, it's different every time, right?
Yeah.
No one experience is the same, and that's like breath work as well. However, this life feels different with when spinal energetics is in your realm, because it is giving us the I don't even want to say ability. It's giving us the, what's the word? A tangible feeling that there is more than what we're currently experiencing in life.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It really does.
It doesn't have to make sense, but you can feel it. It's like life feels different. You go.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, because my experience was, I came with my skepticism, right? I mean, you were somebody who was introduced to me via our friend Tamara, and then we'd connected and I'd been watching with interest. I felt integrity, a lot of integrity from you online. So there was a willingness within me, and this is the important thing about each facilitator having their own frequency, right? So someone else, I might have been like, nah, but because I was already attuned to your frequency, I was like, okay, yeah, let me watch. And then I'd noticed that you were sharing around moving through some trauma pieces. I then experienced some trauma, sexual trauma on a holiday. And it was like, okay, like everything was starting to pull us together. One could say the alignment was there prior to our coming together.
Well, can I just quickly say one thing there?
Please.
That is the energy.
That is
already
the energy.
working its magic before these things land in the physical. And this is where the power of integration comes in, because if we can't control that with the logical mind, that wasn't logic. That happened, which goes to show that in the energetic field, something that we cannot physically see, things are transpiring. So when we do the healing work and we do these things, we can't control what happens in the physical. Otherwise, we're interrupting the natural flow of life and how things are. Okay, sorry, carry on.
No, and I think that's really important. Everything is being aligned for us, and I believe you. The track's being laid, right? And so I think, I sort of took a chance, and there's a part of my journey that I was in as well, which was being willing to accept help.
Yeah.
Huge part of my own journey. So this was all part of the medicine. And I think I'd reached out to you. You'd said you wanted some subjects to work on, right? And I was like, I'd be up for it, but I'd missed out, and you'd already got some willing parties, and I was like, okay, never mind. And then you reached out and you were like, actually, I have a session that's come up. Do you want it? And it was like, oh, well, how much? No, it's free. And it was like, even that was humbling. To be, because I had some big financial stuff going on this year that I've been working through, this karmic stuff, like fuck me, it's been big. And to be offered the support from you in that way, and then to have undoubtedly a huge release of not only that trauma that I'd recently experienced, but it felt ancient. Like it felt like this big release from my psoas of like this huge release of sexual trauma that was given to me, I believe, from my predecessors through my lineage, that I've been carrying and that I've been trying to heal by having these experiences in this lifetime. So that was my first experience with you. And I came with this huge amount of skepticism of like, this is not going to work. This is ridiculous. I'm laying on my bed. She's on Zoom. She's looking at me through her laptop.
How on earth is this
and I believe in energy work. I do. I believe it comes into my own practitioner space. But there was an element of like, you're going to have to prove this right, and actually you didn't need to at all, because it just took care of itself. I felt, as you say, I could feel the difference.
From that, and there was a moment, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure it was that first session where you had a similar thought of, just let it happen, like surrender to this actually being something. Because
Yeah.
there was a moment, and I remember where it was like not resistance, but almost just like keeping it an arm's length away. Like, I don't, you're gonna come into my field, like, who are you? Like, what is this? You know, like all of that. But there was this moment, and I'm pretty sure you said something afterwards where it was just like, yeah, I just fully surrendered.
Yeah, I
And
was
the
just
thing
like,
is,
come on then. It's almost let it be, you know, like fully accept this gift.
and that gift is you. Like when we're fully surrendering, we're surrendering to ourselves. We're surrendering to the medicine of our own innate healing. We're surrendering to the power within. It's not, I fully see it as I'm just a conduit of that energy to come through. It's not like I'm like, oh, this is my energy, take this.
I'm healing you.
And I'm healing you, you know, everyone praise me. It's not that. It's literally like, it's a vessel.
Yeah.
I see it as like a water slide. I'm the physical structure of a water slide, and the energy is the water that just comes through my body and just
love it. I guess you're the hollow bone in that sense. What I do remember is we had low conversation about it after, but one significant piece that we both felt was after I'd had the release from the psoas and the energy went down my legs and they almost bananaed. I felt the energy come back up from my feet all the way up to my third eye at that point of surrender and just burst me open. And that was fascinating because I'd had that very personal experience. And then after you were like, yeah, and there was this moment where I just felt your energy rush all the way from your feet, all the way up to your third eye. And I was like, oh shit, you know, like it was just absolutely true. Yeah.
And like, don't get me wrong, for those who are listening and you're going to go check out Spinal Energetics, I'm sure it looks woo, it looks out of this world, it looks esoteric, it looks fake to some people's eye online.
It does,
and to be honest, I'm glad it does, because it's making us think differently. If you were to see something that doesn't expand your consciousness or make you think, what on earth is that, then we're going to be staying the same. We're going to just be looking at the same thing, reading the same information, doing the same thing. But it's like, I'm glad it does, because yes, to a skeptic or someone who doesn't believe, they might be like, that's just, I mean, the amount of slandering Spinal Energetics gets. They're paid actors, especially Sarah, the founder, she gets a whole load of stuff. But until you're not actually denying the modality, denying the parts of ourselves. When we reject these types of things, we're rejecting the part of ourselves that has that ability. We're rejecting the parts of ourselves that actually want that thing the most, that actually probably needs that thing the most. We're rejecting the parts of ourselves that want to feel and heal and overcome and all of these things. And so, spinal is now, I guess, another facet of space holding, which I'm not actually quite doing much of at the moment. But it really is another tool to be used. I kind of went from like from being obsessed with breathwork to being obsessed with spinal, being like, well, now spinal is the only thing that I'm going to do because it's the best, just in my own eyes. Such a projector. But I do truly feel that having a toolkit or not even a toolkit, having a relationship with multiple modalities is so important, because we can pull upon different ways of, I keep using the word healing, but I don't know if I'm really resonating with that word. Just different ways to support ourselves when we're in different seasons. Because a breathwork session might not be what the body needs in that moment, depending on where the nervous system is at, depending on where the heart is at. Like, what do I actually want? What do I actually need right now? Like, do I need to be held, or do I want to do this on my own? And I think over time we build that. And there was definitely a time where I was like, I'm only going to go to breathwork to a class where a facilitator is holding me. And then I was like, well, what's that? Do I feel like I can't hold myself? Do I feel like I can't go there? Like, can I trust myself? Can I do it? And that's a question I often get asked in breathwork is, can I do this at home? And I'm like, yeah, you can. You can go there because you know how to hold yourself. And that was something so profound, because after I stopped going to classes for a while and holding myself, I was having quote unquote more profound experiences, because it was just me and my energy. I created the playlist. I set it up how I wanted it. It was in my own time, and it was just my own breath. And I was like, wow. And the beautiful thing about spinal is, because we are accessing, with a practitioner or not, because we are accessing our own innate healing abilities, almost the more spinal you have, the more spinal you don't need, in a sense of, so now if I just drop into a light meditation, I'll just close my eyes and take 3 deep breaths, the energy just comes on and I start moving, which is so fascinating. And it's like, again, we don't need anything or anyone outside of us. We may have somebody to support us. It's like, the way I see it is, I go surfing, I have a surf coach who will help me get up on the board, but once I'm on the board, it's all me. They ain't riding the wave with me. They're way back there. I'm the one riding the wave now. I just needed that little bit of support to get on, right? And so it's kind of like that, having the support of practitioners, space holders, whatnot, to help us get on the wave, and then we can ride solo. And I think there is something so powerful in that. And then all of a sudden we've got all our peers and mentors riding the waves with us. And that's the community, the community piece. And
well, I feel really grateful to have been invited onto that surfboard with you.
I love riding the waves with you.
It's so fun, isn't it? It's so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been such an interesting like introduction, and then just a very instant connection and instant trust. And just for those that are just getting to know Abbi, I just who you're meeting here today, she has full integrity, and she's just so consistently Abbi regardless of the setting. And I think it's really important also, we just want to give you some strokes here. And ultimately, like the thing that I feel and that I really love is the lack of ego that is applied to you, the way that you facilitate. And it's like, this is, you're healing yourself, and there's such a permission slip in that to allow people to really believe in themselves and their innate ability to heal. And when you say it, I believe you, and I see other people resonate with that too in the group settings that I've sat in with you. So I just think it's a really beautiful medicine in a world where everybody wants to be the thing that heals everybody. There's a lot of ego in this industry, let's call it an industry, in the spiritual industry. And I think, I've been burned personally by, an organization that ultimately had zero ethics, right? So, we have to be really careful about who we choose to work with.
I agree. And I think it's very beautiful that this industry is growing so much. Yes, in the multiple ways, coaching, mentorship, archetypal work, energy work, it is becoming very known and very like popular as well. And I think that is, again, the law of polarity, both beautiful and a blessing, and also quite scary, because the integrity can decrease over time when so many more people are popping up left, right, and center. Although, like, everyone has discernment, and you can really feel into who is of service and transformation and who is there for their own part.
And I love that, because you've brought back in the masculine, right? The masculine is all about discernment. So through the journey of this podcast and this recording, even what you're starting out speaking about, how this lack of masculine was causing these physical problems, these relationship issues, and actually then you speak about discernment and how this integrous part of you has really showed up, your boundaries. One of the other pieces about you that you really role model well is your boundaries. Like, I've just been fully like, I know where I stand with you. It's like, do you want to hang out? Actually, no, I'm really tired. Cool. There's like just no gray area. So such an embodiment of the masculine that I witness with you, which has been a part of your own transformation, right?
It has. And it's interesting because I do feel like with this current season that I'm in right now, there is a very beautiful unfolding of healthy masculine within me, based on the decisions that I've made and how I'm positioning myself in my life now. And also there's part of me that's like, what about the feminine?
Well, I think this is what I see for you, right? There's just such this beautiful opening and invitation now for you to have the safety of the masculine, for you to invite more of the feminine in. And I really want to be a part of that journey for you.
Oh,
I
you
really
totally
want to
are.
give that back to you, that beautiful connection to the feminine. So
well, that's it.
to see what is created within you, in that expansion.
And from this place of now having more of a healthy masculine within me, I have been able to recognize and witness where I have been, from what place I've been showing up from in my life.
Yes.
And I'm going to bring this into space holding and the integrity piece that you've shared, which thank you for the reflections that you've given. And if I'm completely honest with myself, I did start to notice a distortion in not necessarily the offerings themselves that I was putting out, but the reason why I was putting out so many offerings.
Yes.
And that was because there was a part of me that needed validation. This is a really open, vulnerable piece to share, especially publicly, but it's like, and this is where I think integrity and asking ourselves these honest questions really do come in, because moving back here and starting a life fresh at the age of 30 or 31, whatever age it was, and feeling like I really wanted to and needed to forge a path so that I had two legs to stand on, living alone in London, right? And having the stubbornness to be like, I want to do what I'm doing and I'm not getting a job because I haven't been employed for so long, and all of that. So those are pieces of it. We'll come back to the job thing again, park the job thing. And I started to notice that I wanted to, because of the place that I've been in a sense of like starting from scratch again, not having a foundation, actually feeling like I'm operating or living on a tectonic plate that was just wobbly. I was like, having sold out events started to become a little kick for me to almost an illusion that I was doing well, almost illusion that I am stable. If I've got sold out events, which, don't get me wrong, this is where I think consciousness and unconscious blend. And again, when I used to numb myself through travel and partying, I love travel and partying, I love it, but I didn't realize I was numbing myself. So here again, it's similar. 10 years later, I didn't realize I was giving myself a false sense of security through the validation of having sold out events. And so it was like, where is this actually coming from? Why am I getting such a kick? Because that is not in service to transformation. That's like, am I only holding these events because of this validation I'm getting, or am I deeply holding this to be in service of medicine and people's healing? And it's not black or white. It's not a yes or no. It's a blurred blend of the two. And that's where I've decided to pull back, because that is out of integrity for me, in a sense of, I love my work. This doesn't mean I love my work any less. This does not mean that I'm going to get rid of it forever. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that space needs to be created so that I am coming from a different place from within. I'm coming from a more grounded place, a more stable place, a stronger, deeper foundation within myself, which is the masculine part, so that the space that I am holding is more integral. And yes, okay, I feel like there was a distortion in the integrity, but not coming from a place of malice or like, fuck these people. It's coming from a place of, things are changing and things are shifting, and something needs to change in order for the soil to continue to be watered, for the seeds to grow. And that was a bit of a pill to swallow, because, you know, just you saying around the whole ego thing, it's like, well, that was my ego protecting itself. It wasn't, look at me, I'm the best. It was a natural mechanism of, I've got to be at the forefront so that I can survive. And so that I was like, well, do I even want the foundation that I'm on and the space that I'm holding to be from that place? I've dug my feet deep and I've done it. Like, it's pretty phenomenal to just go to another country, the other side of the world, and just pick up where you left off and continue and build a whole community. That's beautiful. But was the soil of which I was coming from, is that what I wanted to deeply be on? And so that decision to slow down my offerings and put myself first has what's allowed me to actually see this. So I stepped back. And we were briefly touching on like identity just before we jumped on this, but it's like such an identity thing, being a space holder, which but as a personal trainer, it's not really recognized as a space holder, it's a PT. But every PT knows that you're not just a personal trainer. You're a freaking orthodontist, you're a dentist, you're a doctor, you're a therapist, you're a shopper, you help everything. You become, and so recognizing that being a space holder from the age of 23 to now 33, is a huge chunk of my life where I've not just been there, but a lot of it has been focused on being there for other people.
Yeah.
And if I'm completely honest again with myself, is how much of that have I actually given to myself? Yes, I have all the tools. Yes, I have the experiences. Yes, I have the awareness. Yes, I have the intuition, whatever. But where am I at within myself? And am I actually truly giving myself what I need in this current moment of my life? And, you know, also reflecting on the fact that I was 5 years old and being the emotional support for my family. I'm like, this is actually a pattern. This isn't just service and purpose. This is a pattern. And so deciding to pull back on all my offerings, and I'm still doing spinal out of pure joy and love, to fully pull back and be like, wow, like, who would I be if I'm not a space holder? Who would I be if I have a job in the workforce again? And this also came from, because I've decided to create stability in my life, and I did that by deciding to live on my own. So that was a big decision. I decided to not have a housemate anymore, because having a housemate was keeping me in the same financial bracket as well, wasn't allowing me to grow. Having the safety, quote unquote, of somebody else paying rent in the home that I've been in for a couple of years was, again, an illusion, a false sense of safety, because I was placing that on someone else outside of me to pay rent. And so it dropped in from my friend who's a channel to live alone. And I was like, wow, so you want me to live alone in a 2-bed flat in London on my own? Like that level of responsibility. I was like, okay, things have to shift in order for me to actually say yes to this and to live on my own 2 feet, like fully 2 feet in, fully in London, 2 feet in, not dabbling, not illusions of validation over there. Like I have to sit here and validate myself and say yes. So by doing that, and you would think that having my basically my outgoings doubled, and I thought, oh well, having a doubled outgoing is going to make me wobble, but it actually gave me everything I needed. It's given me the peace in my home. It's given me the autonomy. My landlord is amazing, and he's like, do what you want to the house. Like he's like, if you want to make this your home, I hope that means that you're going to stay. And so by doing something that has scared me, and doing something that is actually allowing me to physically see the needle moving forward in my life, and doing actually something for me outside of a practice or a modality, or yes, okay, a big decision, or something that fully scares the shit out of me, I've done something that has allowed me to anchor in more safety. And this is what's a beautiful part of the current transformation that I'm having, that again, it's not in sitting down and doing a practice. It's not in going to a modality or doing another bit of healing. The healing has actually been in the decision, in the action. And I think from my experience, and I feel like this is quite present in the healing world as well, is that we're so heavily focused on the healing and the emotional part of it that we're not actually integrating this part by making the decisions and choices in life that are necessary. What am I actually changing in my reality that coexists and meets the quote unquote healed part of me? Am I actually allowing myself to live as more of the full being that I now am? And that was the decision that I made, where I was like, okay, the studio that I was working from, the lodge space closed down. So a lot of my work stopped, breathwork classes, everything stopped suddenly. And it all happened at around the same time as my house situation. So I was like, all of these big changes are actually very important for me to anchor in right now.
And this track being laid again, right, for you.
And I was like, it's not in the next breathwork session or spinal energetic session that I want to do. That's actually almost a distraction. Going into another practice sometimes, or another deep dive or whatever, another coaching session, can actually be a distraction from the physical steps and actionable steps we need to take in our life, or we could be ready to take. We're just not allowing ourselves to do so. And I would never have thought that committing to a house on my own where my outgoings are doubled would give me more stability. And from that stable place, my nervous system has been able to soften and settle, which has then allowed me to have a bird's eye view of, oh, perhaps some of my events was coming from external validation, perhaps this and perhaps that. And I've started to be able to view different parts of my life, and has actually allowed me to open out into complete wonder of, what would I do? Who would I be if I'm doing something different to what I've always done? who would I be? We are multifaceted beings. We are multi-dimensional beings. And I started to ask myself the question is, what's the point of living if I don't really know myself? And how would I really know myself by doing the same thing I've always done? And I was like, whoa, these are big questions. Like now that I've got this safety and this like backbone again, I can start to ask myself these questions, not just what's the next event I'm going to do and what transmission is going to come through. It's like, what else could I do in my life that's completely different? Who would I be if I dressed differently? Who would I be if I just start to make different decisions? I was like, I feel like this is such a missing piece of quote unquote the work.
Yeah, totally. The actual integration, right?
Yeah, and of going out and being somebody different to who we've always been in this world. And it's not about changing every facet of who we are. It's just about open curiosity of, like, what would I do if I did something different? Who would I become? What if I do say yes to that thing?
Yeah.
You know?
And you went out and actively sought employment, right? Let's talk about the job, inverted commas.
So the job, the job, which is wild. So part of this, I was like, I want to get a job because I want to do things differently for a while. I want to have a different approach to life. I want to experience myself in a new environment under new rules. I've been self-employed since 23. Ain't nobody else telling me what to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, how would I be? I'm used to having 4-hour work days. Don't get me wrong, this is all a beautiful privilege. And it's taken a lot to get to this point where I understand my energy. I understand how I work. I'm good for 4 hours and let me nap for the rest of it. That's the projector in me. That's how I am. So I was like, how would I be outside of my comfort zone, working in a new place where perhaps I'm working for multiple hours per day, multiple days in a row, where I can't just be like, oh, I'm going to have a nap now. How am I going to show up to that discomfort, new sensations in my body? How am I going to, and I started asking myself all these questions and I was like, I'm going to get a job. And then I was like, oh, fuck that, I'm not going to get a job. And then I was like, I am going to get a job. So I started to notice this grapple between parts of my ego that wouldn't let that happen. Am I a failure? Have I failed at business? Am I not successful? What are the people in my industry going to think? Like, am I doing this because, am I not successful? Have I not? And all of this stuff, the ego was having a good old time. And then I was like, no, this is open curiosity. All of these questions that have come up, these bigger questions that I've been asking myself, want to be nourished. What's the worst that's going to happen? I hate it and I leave. Cool.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. No one's at harm.
Yeah.
Anyway, I decided to get a job. And the way that the job fell in, quicker than anybody can say boo, I now work at Bluebella lingerie store, which is also very poignant to the whole
aligned to your feminine
aligned. I was like, I just want something nourishing that I enjoy. I feel like I haven't really experienced London to the fullness of what London can offer. I live quite a quiet, small life, and I want to be out in the city. I want to be out in this Christmas spirit, which I do love. And I'm like, got a job in Covent Garden, right in the heart and the center of it all. Lingerie, which is just beautiful. So again, it's another way of connecting with people and having women and men come in and purchase things that they love. And they just feel great. And having a different type of connection and interaction with human that's not just about how deep do you want to go. Relating to humans in another way in retail, which is far from, you know, what I've done over the last 10 years. The only other job I had separate to this industry was flight center. Again, a love for travel. That was beautiful. I could relate to people. I loved that. But this is just like such a nourishing, it's been so nourishing. And the interesting thing, it's like the metaphor of putting all the stock in order. I mean, that's so, it's very mundane. Let me just put size 8, size 10, size 12, size 14 in order. And I'm like, the way that this is actually allowing me to organize my own life at the same time and just be in that and think differently and feel differently and have this whole new feeling to me and life is giving me so much medicine from where I know I'm going to be serving from. So no, I'm not going backwards. Like, this is me talking to my own ego. This is part of forward motion.
And gaining new perspectives, right?
Gaining new perspectives and also coming in
physical experience of being in your human body, almost placing yourself, like imagine yourself like an avatar And you've
Yes.
placed yourself in a whole new game now, right? And you're like
Yes.
exploring the world from that perspective. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. And again, I always say that we're like a slice of pizza. Like you've got a
Mm-hmm.
margarita, and that whole thing tastes like a margarita, but each
Mm.
slice has its own flavor. And
Mm.
you're not going to experience the whole margarita until you taste each slice. And I'm like, this is just my next slice of life that I'm tasting.
Mm.
And it's part of who I am.
Mm.
I dress differently. I get to express myself. I'm like
Mm.
buying so much more lingerie, like it's beautiful. And so this other part of me gets to just be expressed and
Mm.
known. Is it fixed? No. Is
Yeah.
it my full identity? No. It's just a part. And it's so beautiful to explore this,
Mm.
and I did come in with questions like, well, they're 8-hour shifts. Yes. Well, I can't work 8 hours. I want to work 6 hours. So I've come in and just express my needs and express my wants
Yeah.
as an exploration of using my voice as well.
Mm.
Have I got anything to lose? No. Okay, well, you want 6 hours, we want 8. Can we meet in the middle? Sure. We'll give you a 7-hour shift and a 1-hour break. Perfect. So that brought something new in. And then I started
Yeah.
asking questions like, so what menstrual policies do you have in place? Because I
Mm.
would like to know. Usually I would give myself 3 days off at the time
Mm.
I'm ready to bleed. What would happen if I'm working? Could I
Mm.
physically put my body through that? No, it's against my own grain. It's against my own. So what do we have in place if we're bleeding? Well, what would you
Mm.
like? I would like to have my days off. Okay, well, let us know and you can have your days off. I'm like, oh, fancy that. Just bringing a whole
It's
new
crazy, right? Ask. Yeah.
ask.
Advocate for yourself. Use your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just been, it's just given me so much growth. And yes, it's given me more stability. Abby, you work
Mm.
and you get paid. That's simple.
I love that. I love how you've really invited in what a medicine journey it can be, just to turn up for life, right? Just to turn up for life and put in the action, as you said. And
Yeah.
actually, I think we can get so addicted to the healing and to
Yeah.
for me personally, I do think it's really important to have mentors, to have teachers.
I
Like
agree.
very often
100%.
they're very much an anchor, a guide. And much like yourself, there's also that opportunity, that element for me to really integrate what I've learned in those
Yes.
spaces in between,
Yes.
where it's down to me. I have to take responsibility
Mm-hmm.
for practicing, not practicing, decisions I'm making. Doesn't mean I'm completely alone. I have to remind myself constantly it's okay to ask for help. That's one of
Yeah.
my things, ruthless self-sufficiency.
Oh
So
gosh.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's so painful. So
Yes. Yeah.
I've had to de-shame being able to
Yes.
connect and say to people, do you know what, I'm not okay. Like I need some help with this. Could I run
Yeah.
my thinking past you? But yeah, I just love how you've explained so beautifully and demonstrated and embodied what medicine journey life can be on its own without having to dive deep into a modality, as we
Yes.
would call it, and a healing tool. Life itself is healing. Life
Life
itself is the
itself.
medicine.
Well, that's right. I've always said life is university.
Mm.
Like, and the way that we learn is through experience. There's
Mm.
only so much we can learn about ourselves behind closed doors or through a Zoom
Yeah.
screen or at a session.
Mm.
That's the easy part to show up for.
Yeah.
The hard
Absolutely.
part, or the part that takes a little more conscious effort and action, is actually now, well, this is the part that I've integrated within myself. I'm now going to be as that person in the real world.
Mm.
And how do I do that? I go and try new things. I explore the parts of me that want to be fulfilled, that
Mm.
want to be nourished. And there was just a part of me that wanted a bit of the mundane,
Mm.
a bit of something in my life where it's not all about space holding. And that's where it started to actually deter me a little bit from my own inner work, because I'm holding so much space of it. I just
Yes.
either needed rest or just to be away from it. So I wasn't
Oh,
doing what I needed to do for
yes.
myself. Yes, okay, the practices. I've always done the practices, but not actually making the tangible change in my life.
Mm.
And I'm really excited to see what unfolds from this, whilst also
Mm.
not rushing ahead. I'm noticing my brain be a bit like, oh, this is boring. And it was interesting actually, because there was a part where I didn't have much external stimulation. I didn't have the validation
Mm.
coming in from a sold out event. I
Mm.
didn't have, yes, don't get me wrong, there is some sort of validation that comes from a client's transformation. I'm validated because it goes to show that the work that all I've done and knowledge that I have works. So we feel a sense of validation. We feel a sense of validation in a job where we do a really good job and you get recognized for it. But I noticed that when I didn't have all that, my mind was telling me that my life was boring.
Yeah.
And I was like, is my life boring, or are you just trying to seek validation outside of you?
Yeah.
Then I asked myself the question, how would I validate myself outside of what I do? And I sat there. I was like, well, I don't actually know that answer right now. And I was like, that's where my work lies. How do I validate myself outside of what I do? How could I validate myself for being in retail? Ooh, you know? And so that's been such a path of exploration, is just the questions that I'm now able to ask. Yeah. Because I have a different perspective based on doing something different. And that's giving so much medicine. How do I validate? That was such a question. How do I validate myself outside of what I do? How can I validate myself for being who I am? And that was like, there's a saying that I've really been connected with recently, is you can't see the label from inside the jar. And it's like, you have to get out the jar to see the label. And to me, that's a shift in perspective. How can I see what I've been in? You can't see what you're in until you're out of it sometimes. Or we don't know the fullness of what we're in until we're out of it sometimes. So it's like, let me remove myself so I can have a different perspective. And I am so excited to come back when I'm ready to fully serve from fullness again, from this new perspective and this new approach, because I just
Replenished.
and just different. And it's
I'm
such
just going to stretch that into my whole being for you there. For those that are not able to see, I was just like, my whole body just wanted to expand on Abby's behalf there. It was like,
open and just like give myself permission to live differently. And they're the pieces that I really feel like were missing from our last conversation. I'm aware we're coming up to a time frame
we are. I
but
mean, I could go on
just,
for hours, but it does feel as well like a really beautiful place to conclude, because I always try to wrap up with something as a takeaway for the listener, you know, so whether there's somebody who's holding space for others, and I think so many of the pieces you've just spoken to there are so valuable, and then also those who are just embarking upon a journey of healing for themselves. If you were to be able to sort of wrap it up, that whole
put it in a pretty
90
little
minutes,
box.
like what, or not even to wrap it up, but is there a key piece that you'd like to sort of offer to either of those groups of listeners and everyone in between that?
I feel like it's a constant meeting of where you're at. I feel like in life, as a society, we're conditioned to go from here to there very quick, and that success is the only way forward. But there's no such thing as success when it comes to our healing. It just is. Yes, okay, we may be successful in overcoming something, but a constant reminder to check in and say, where am I at? Am I trying to be somewhere where I'm not ready to go? Am I trying to be somewhere other than here right now? Because I say this based on the experience that I've had in the last few years being back to London. I thought the faster that I would go, the easier it would be. But actually, the faster that I've gone, the harder it's been. So really slowing down and just saying, where am I at? What do I actually need right now? And how can I serve that the most? And that might be a mentor, that might be a modality, that might be nothing, right? There's so much in the stillness of just, I don't need to change or do anything right now. I'm just here. And I think that's for any human, whether we're space holders or not, or in the beginning of our journey. It's like, I don't need to deep dive myself into more healing and to speed up any sort of process. As a space holder, are you wanting to grow your community faster than what it's ready to grow? And I ask these questions because this is what I've asked myself. You know, and it's not always about more healing or more inner work. It's about the experience in life that we're having. And I feel like that's, there's no rush. And the moment that I've slowed things down, it feels like life is actually speeding up.
It's so true.
And I think that's where the energy of the feminine comes in.
So I'm going to ask the question.
Go on.
Do you feel complete? Dangerous question.
I do.
Do we ever?
Do we ever? I mean, there's like you said, we could talk about this for hours, and I really could, but I feel much more complete because it felt like I really wanted to honor where I'm currently at in life
Yeah.
and speaking from this part, because I believe we all come round to this point at some point, whether we've
Yeah.
been here before or we're on the way now or whatever it might be. I just wish I had some of what I'm learning now sooner.
Yeah.
And there's no need to rush piece.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
And I will make sure that in the show notes that we make sure everybody knows where to find you, because you do
Yes.
have new offerings coming up in the new year, right?
Yeah.
So
So at the
we're end of December now as we're recording this. I'm not sure when it's going to be released, but
yes,
you have
unless we do
offerings.
a retake. No, just kidding.
Yeah, we are
So
not doing another retake.
no.
Boundary.
Yeah. So essentially, I am offering one-on-one spinal energetic sessions at the moment. So in person and online, they're available pretty much all the time. And if it isn't spinal energetics, then I am holding space in breathwork as well. I hold space in a combination of them. I will have an event, I believe, in February. It's probably going to be a female retreat, just to get all stomp around the fire, you know. And then I am at the very early stages, so don't hold me to it if it doesn't go through, but I'm pretty sure it will. A retreat in Bali in end of April.
Wow.
Yes.
Exciting.
So that's where I'm currently at. It's a very much an idea drops in, and usually I would take it full horn and say, right, let's get it done, the speed, and let's get it there really quick. But this time I'm sitting back and I'm taking it a bit slower, and I'm letting things drop in as they are. So again, really incorporating the lessons that I'm currently working with real time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that retreat, it feels very special. It's with one of my soul sisters in Perth, and it's going to be a full expression of how we live and embody our lives through multimodalities, but adventure and fun and joy.
Beautiful.
So yeah, it should be really beautiful.
Beautiful. And I have this distinct feeling that at some point next year, depending on where my journey takes me, because of much of your journey that you've just been reflecting feels very much aligned to where I'm at, in that kind of stepping back a little bit, being really discerning about the one-to-one clients that I'm working through with.
Yes.
But also having this desire to hold space, you know,
Yes.
and I definitely feel that next year there will be a collab. I can
Oh,
feel it.
yeah, that's already in the
100%.
stars.
It
Yeah.
has to happen. Yeah, I
Yes.
can.
It will.
Yeah,
And
it
that's
feels good.
for myself in business, not just business, but holding space. I said to myself, next year, it's all about the year of collaboration. I don't want to do it alone anymore. I'm so done with that. I don't want to run events on my own. I don't want to do it. We've all got medicine to bring.
Yeah.
We've all got gifts to share and space.
And I just think there's something so beautiful that's created in that collaborative space as well. There's just the way that the energies start to work together, it just creates a whole different field. So it's exciting.
It
I
really
found
does.
that this year I made my year of collaboration, and as soon as I intended it, things just started to roll in, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then the podcast landed, and I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. So
yeah,
excited.
Watch this space. I can't wait. And of course, we'll be doing more work together.
Yes, we will.
Pathway of the feminine.
Yes, my love. So thank you everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as me. And over and out. Love you, Abby.
Thank you. Big love.
Thank you, my darling.